never imagined that one phone call could completely change her life. It was a cold Monday evening, and she was sitting alone in her tiny apartment, counting the little money she had left for the month. Her rent was due in 5 days, her electricity bill was still unpaid, and there was barely anything left in her refrigerator. Mia worked 2 jobs just to survive, but somehow, every month ended the same way. She was tired, worried, and beginning to lose hope. She closed her eyes and quietly whispered to herself, "I just need one thing to go right." A few seconds later, her phone suddenly rang. The number was unfamiliar. Mia hesitated before answering, but eventually picked up. A calm male voice asked, "Is this Mia Carter?" She replied, "Yes. Who is this?" The man introduced himself as Peter. Mia didn't recognize the name, so she immediately asked why he was calling her. Peter explained that his assistant had seen her working at a cafe and had recommended her. Mia became even more confused. She asked what he wanted from her, and what Peter said next left her completely speechless. He told her that he wanted to hire her to be his girlfriend. Mia actually laughed because she thought he was joking. But Peter's voice remained completely serious. He explained that he didn't need a real girlfriend. He needed someone to pretend to be his girlfriend for 3 months. His wealthy family had been constantly pressuring him to settle down, and his former girlfriend was getting married soon. Peter wanted to prove to his family that he had already moved on. Mia couldn't understand why a successful man like him couldn't simply tell his family the truth, but Peter didn't seem interested in explaining everything. Instead, he made her an offer she couldn't easily ignore. He would pay her $20,000 for 3 months of pretending to be his girlfriend. Mia went completely silent. $20,000 was more money than she had ever had in her bank account. With that amount, she could pay her rent, clear her bills, and maybe even start the small bakery she had dreamed about for years. But the idea still sounded crazy. She asked Peter why he had chosen her. He explained that she wasn't part of his social circle, she didn't know his family, and most importantly, she didn't have any reason to become emotionally involved with him. Mia found that last part almost insulting. Still, she needed the money, and after spending the entire night thinking about it, she finally called Peter the next morning and accepted his offer. Before agreeing, however, Mia made several rules. There would be no kissing, no controlling what she wore, no interference in her personal life, and when the 3 months were over, they would simply go their separate ways. Peter agreed to everything without arguing. Neither of them realized how important that final agreement would become. That evening, Peter arrived outside Mia's apartment in an expensive black car. When he stepped out, Mia immediately realized that he looked exactly like the kind of man she had imagined: wealthy, confident, serious, and completely used to getting what he wanted. Peter looked at his watch and told her she was late. Mia checked the time and pointed out that she was only 2 minutes late. She also told him that she didn't like arrogant men. For a moment, they simply stared at each other. Then, unexpectedly, Peter smiled. It was the first genuine smile Mia had seen from him, and for some reason, it made him look completely different. During the drive to his family's mansion, Peter explained that their first appearance together would be at a family dinner. Mia was nervous because she had never pretended to be someone's girlfriend before, especially not in front of a wealthy family. Peter tried to reassure her, but Mia reminded him that she was doing this for the money and nothing more. Peter agreed, but there was a strange amusement in his eyes. When they finally arrived at the mansion, Mia took a deep breath before stepping inside. The moment they entered, Peter's entire family turned toward them. His mother immediately smiled and walked over to greet Mia. She welcomed her warmly and asked how long they had been together. Mia looked at Peter, waiting for him to answer. Peter calmly said that they had been together for almost 6 months. Mia nearly choked on her drink. 6 months? They had barely known each other for a few days. She secretly kicked Peter under the table, but he continued eating as if nothing had happened. Mia quickly realized that pretending to be Peter's girlfriend was going to be much harder than she had expected. She had no idea that by the end of that evening, she and Peter would begin to understand each other in a way neither of them had planned. And what started as a simple 3-month business arrangement was about to become something neither Mia nor Peter could control. Because sometimes, the biggest mistake in life is believing that feelings can be written into a contract. The first family dinner was only the beginning. After that evening, Mia and Peter had to attend several events together, and every time they appeared in public, they had to convince everyone that their relationship was real. At first, Mia found it exhausting. Peter was serious, overly organized, and seemed to have an answer for everything. Mia, on the other hand, was outspoken and had no problem telling him exactly what she thought. They argued about small things constantly, from what restaurant they should visit to how Peter expected her to behave around his family. But strangely, those arguments slowly became the moments they enjoyed the most. One evening, after another long family dinner, Peter drove Mia home. The car was unusually quiet. Mia looked out of the window and suddenly asked why he had never told his family the truth. Peter kept his eyes on the road and explained that his family had always expected perfection from him. His father had built the company from nothing, and Peter had spent most of his life trying to become the son his father wanted. Even after his father's death, Peter still felt like he was living under the expectations he had left behind. Mia listened quietly. For the first time, she realized there was much more behind Peter's cold personality than she had originally thought. As the weeks passed, Mia began discovering the person Peter kept hidden from everyone else. He wasn't always serious. Sometimes he could be surprisingly funny, especially when he wasn't trying to be. He remembered small details about her, like the coffee she liked, the songs she listened to while working, and the fact that she always became quiet whenever she was worried. Mia also discovered that Peter rarely talked about his personal life. He spent most of his time working and had almost no close friends. His entire world seemed to revolve around his company. Peter, meanwhile, became fascinated by Mia's dreams. One night, while they were having dinner at a small restaurant, Mia casually mentioned that she had always wanted to open her own bakery. She imagined a small place filled with the smell of fresh bread and coffee, where people could sit by the window and feel at home. Peter asked why she had never opened one. Mia smiled and explained that dreams were easy to have when you didn't have to worry about money. Peter offered to help her financially, but Mia immediately refused. She told him that she didn't want someone else's money to build her dream. She wanted to know that she had built it herself. Peter respected her answer, even though he didn't completely understand it. After that conversation, something between them began to change. Their fake dates no longer felt completely fake. They started talking for hours after their planned events were over. Sometimes Peter would call Mia late at night just to ask how her day had been. Sometimes Mia would send him a message about something funny that happened at work, and Peter would find himself smiling at his phone without even realizing it. Neither of them mentioned the change, but both could feel it. One rainy evening, Mia was standing outside a restaurant waiting for Peter when he arrived with an umbrella. Instead of simply handing it to her, he walked beside her and held it over both of them. They walked through the rain in silence. Mia looked at him and suddenly realized that she felt safe around him. That realization frightened her because safety was never supposed to be part of their arrangement. A few days later, Peter invited Mia to his apartment for dinner. He attempted to cook for her, despite having almost no idea what he was doing. Mia watched him struggle in the kitchen and couldn't stop laughing. Peter looked annoyed at first, but eventually started laughing too. It was one of the first times Mia had seen him completely relaxed. They ended up eating a simple meal that wasn't nearly as good as Peter had hoped, but neither of them cared. They spent the rest of the night talking on the balcony while the city lights stretched across the horizon. Mia eventually asked Peter what he thought would happen when their 3 months were over. Peter became quiet. After a long pause, he admitted that he didn't know. Mia smiled and asked whether he would miss her. Peter looked at her for a few seconds before quietly saying that he probably would, more than he should. Mia looked away because she didn't know how to respond. Neither of them said the words that were already beginning to form in their hearts. From that night onward, Peter became more protective of Mia, but never controlling. He made sure she got home safely, remembered important things she had mentioned, and started making excuses just to spend more time with her. Mia noticed every little thing. She also noticed how her own feelings were changing. She began looking forward to seeing Peter even when there was no event to attend. She started missing him when they spent a day apart. And sometimes, when Peter wasn't looking, she caught herself smiling at him. But Mia kept reminding herself that this was temporary. 3 months. That was the agreement. Then, one afternoon, Peter's former girlfriend unexpectedly appeared at one of his business events. Her name was Olivia, and she was the woman everyone believed Peter had once planned to marry. Mia immediately noticed the tension between them. Olivia looked at Peter with regret and asked if he was really serious about Mia. Peter simply answered that he was. Olivia then looked at Mia and quietly warned her that Peter had never allowed himself to become emotionally attached to anyone. Mia didn't understand why those words stayed in her mind for the rest of the evening. Later that night, Peter found Mia sitting alone outside. He asked what was wrong, but she didn't answer immediately. Finally, she asked him whether he had ever truly loved Olivia. Peter admitted that he had once believed he did, but eventually realized that the relationship was based more on expectations than genuine love. Mia asked what he thought real love felt like. Peter looked at her. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, he quietly replied that he thought real love was when someone became important to you without you realizing when it happened. Mia's heart began beating faster. She knew exactly what he meant. And Peter knew it too. Neither of them realized that their fake relationship had already crossed a line they couldn't return from. They were falling in love. But just when Mia was beginning to believe that maybe their story could become real, she discovered something that would break her trust completely. While looking for her handbag in Peter's office, Mia accidentally opened a drawer and found their original contract. She picked it up casually, but then she noticed something that made her freeze. There was a signature at the bottom, Peter's signature, and beside it was a date. The contract had been officially terminated 3 weeks earlier. Mia stared at the document in disbelief. Peter had already ended their fake relationship, and he had never told her. She didn't know why he had done it. She didn't know what it meant. But one thing was certain. The man she had slowly begun to trust had been keeping a secret from her. And when Peter walked through the front door that evening, Mia was waiting for him with the contract in her hands. She looked directly into his eyes and asked the question that would change everything. "Peter, why did you end our contract 3 weeks ago?" Peter froze. And for the first time since Mia had met him, he had absolutely nothing to say. Peter stood completely still when Mia asked why he had ended their contract 3 weeks earlier. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. Mia was holding the contract tightly in her hands, trying to hide how hurt she was. She had spent weeks believing that their relationship was slowly becoming real, believing that the feelings growing between them belonged to both of them. But now she wondered if everything had been another part of Peter's plan. Peter finally walked toward her and quietly said that he had ended the contract because he no longer wanted her to stay with him because of money. Mia stared at him in disbelief and asked why he hadn't told her. Peter admitted that he had been afraid. He had realized that somewhere between the fake dates, late-night conversations, and quiet moments together, he had fallen in love with her. The contract had started as a business arrangement, but his feelings had become real. He didn't want Mia to ever wonder whether she was staying because of the $20,000. Mia's eyes filled with tears. She told Peter that he should have given her the choice. He agreed. He knew he had made a mistake, but he had been terrified that if he told her the truth, she would leave. Mia asked him what exactly he was afraid of. Peter looked directly into her eyes and finally said the words he had been keeping inside for weeks. He was afraid of losing her. Mia didn't know what to say. She wanted to believe him, but she was hurt that he had made such an important decision without telling her. She reminded him that their entire relationship had started with a lie. Peter admitted that he couldn't change how it started, but he could change what it meant now. He told her that he didn't want a fake girlfriend anymore. He wanted Mia, not because of a contract, not because of his family, and not because he needed someone beside him at social events. He wanted her because she had become the person he thought about when he woke up and the person he wanted to talk to before going to sleep. Mia began crying. She asked Peter why he had never told her sooner. Peter answered that he had been waiting for the right moment, but every day he became more afraid that the truth would push her away. Mia told him that he had already pushed her away by keeping the secret. She picked up her bag and walked toward the door. Peter didn't stop her. He knew that if he truly loved her, he had to respect her decision, even if it meant losing her. Before Mia left, Peter quietly told her that he loved her. Mia stopped for a moment, but she didn't turn around. She walked out of the apartment with tears in her eyes, leaving Peter standing alone in the room where their relationship had begun. The days that followed were difficult for both of them. Mia returned to her old routine. She went to work, came home, and tried to convince herself that she had made the right decision. But everything reminded her of Peter, the coffee they used to drink together, the restaurants they visited, the songs they listened to during long drives. Even ordinary moments felt different without him. Peter also struggled, but he kept the promise he had made to himself. He didn't chase Mia or force her to come back. Instead, he focused on the things she had taught him. He started spending less time at work and more time with people he cared about. He began to understand that money could solve many problems, but it couldn't buy the things that mattered most. Months passed. One morning, Mia received an invitation in the mail. She almost ignored it because she didn't recognize the name on the envelope. But when she opened it, she froze. The invitation was for the opening of a new business. The name of the company was MIA. She couldn't understand why Peter had named a company after her. Inside the envelope was a handwritten letter from him. Mia slowly opened it and began reading. Peter wrote that when they first met, he thought Mia was simply someone who could help him solve a problem. He had believed that money could make everything simple. But she had changed the way he looked at life. She had reminded him that dreams mattered more than money, that people needed to feel believed in, and that love couldn't be bought or forced. He explained that he had started the new company to help small businesses and young people who had dreams but didn't have the resources to begin. He had named it after Mia because she had been the person who inspired the idea. He made it clear that he wasn't trying to buy her forgiveness or convince her to return. He simply wanted her to know that she had changed his life. At the bottom of the letter, Peter had written one final sentence. He said that if Mia never wanted to see him again, he would understand. But he hoped that one day she would allow him to thank her properly. Mia couldn't stop the tears from falling. She realized that Peter hadn't built the company to impress her. He had built something meaningful because of what she had taught him. That evening, Mia went to the opening. The place was filled with people, but she immediately saw Peter standing near the entrance. He looked different. He wasn't surrounded by assistants or business partners. He was simply standing there, quietly watching the guests. Then he saw her. Peter froze. For a moment, neither of them moved. Mia slowly walked toward him. Peter didn't try to hug her. He didn't ask her to come back. He simply smiled and said that this time there was no contract. Mia smiled through her tears and asked what he had. Peter looked at her and quietly answered, "Nothing, except me." Mia asked what would happen if she said no. Peter told her that he would accept it, because loving someone meant respecting their choice, even when that choice hurt. Mia looked at him for a long moment. Then she reached for his hand. Peter looked down at their hands, almost unable to believe what was happening. Mia smiled and told him that she wasn't saying yes because of the company, the money, or the contract. She was saying yes because somewhere along the way, she had fallen in love with him too. Peter pulled her gently into his arms, and for the first time, there was nothing fake between them. No agreement, no payment, no pretending. Just Peter and Mia. Two people who had entered each other's lives for completely different reasons, only to discover something neither of them had planned. Their relationship had started with a $20,000 contract, but the contract ended long before their love did. And sometimes the most unexpected relationships become the most meaningful ones, not because they begin perfectly, but because two people choose to make them real. Peter had hired Mia to pretend to love him. He never expected her to become the woman he couldn't imagine living without.